Welcome to the last February edition of the PFF Forecast. It is the 27th of February, the eve of the Combine week. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Combine, talk a little bit about free agents and some of the top free agents and where we think they could end up as well. We have a Ballsack or Just Whack, it's back, and we also have recommendations. Let's rock. We should probably start. You made a good point here. We are trying to provide a little bit of, if you want to pay attention to football during this time, we're here for you. If you want to bet on some games or some things, we're here for you. But we recognize that obviously there are a lot of things going on in the world that are much, much more important. Most notably, the fact that the Ukrainian people are fighting for their lives against a invasion that I think it's safe to say I don't think anyone in the world besides like one or two are a proponent of.
Yeah, it's really remarkable to see sort of how some of the events of the past couple of years have turned into this. But there's certainly the Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, has been extremely, and the people of Ukraine have been extremely. They provide a lot of motivation for me, and obviously our thoughts and prayers are with them as they battle through this. But they've been extremely inspirational. I mean, fighting back against a real threat here has been
a much more powerful nation.
Yeah.
Did you know Vladimir Zelensky's background?
Yeah, he's a comedian.
He's a comedian, but he was literally on a television show in the Ukraine playing the president of Ukraine the year before he was before he won the election with like a 78%.
I don't really want to get political, but I do think comedians would make good politicians because they understand sort of I think Jon Stewart would make a good president. Don't you think he kind of understands some of the?
Yeah, I don't want to get too I know what makes a good politician, but I'll say this about comedians, which I did not realize, but I think speaks to your point. The way that a good comedian becomes, the way that they get their stand-up routine or they figure out what's funny is a process of repeated trying things out.
Yeah.
It's a process that I think lends itself to improvement. And that's all you can really ask for in someone when they show up to the White House.
There's a lot of I think what people don't understand, and this is going to be my recommendation because I'm actually going to promote another.
You're going to give your recommendation at the beginning?
No, okay. I'll talk about it at the end. But when a comedian so what's interesting is oftentimes we formulate these big grand opinions of things, and football is like this too, right? We formulate these big grand opinions of things, and we stick to our priors. And what I think is hopefully a cornerstone of what we're doing, we'll talk about this with projections, is look, I didn't have a great projection of the Rams this year. Well, they won the Super Bowl. Okay, well, now take a step back and look and try to refine the way you view the world. Mm-hmm. Josh Allen's provided that for us. Other people, have been great players, and we projected them to be great players. So I think comedians are special in this way of they literally go to places like the Comedy Cellar or the Comedy Store every freaking night, and they try the same joke, and then they get feedback from the crowd, and that's how, when you look at an hour of comedy, that's the process of hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of comedy everywhere else. And I feel when we think about our football opinions, and we think about sort of where we're coming up with our thoughts based upon data, it's coming from the hundreds of thousands of data points that consistently refine our opinions. So it's very similar in that way. And that's why I think folks like comedians end up with great opinions. The other one is oftentimes comedy is born out of things like depression and stuff like that. And I feel like people who have gone through that kind of stuff have more humility and have more empathy than maybe the average person does. It does not surprise me how well he's handled this, just given his background.
Yeah. Yes, he has acted very admirably. I will say that there are some interesting responses from people who have no idea what they're talking about. The funniest one that I saw, I don't remember who this is.
Oh, I have a few in Ballsack or just wax, so don't ruin it.
Well, I won't ruin it, but a woman who like apparently was an actress of some kind wrote a poem to Vladimir Putin about how if she were Putin's mother, this might not have happened because like.
Oh, I saw that.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
Talk about taking yourself a little too seriously.
This is sort of like the baby Hitler thing, right? Where like if you could kill baby Hitler, would you? And it's like, what are we even doing here?
The other thing that I thought was interesting was, so this gets into a sporting event that happened today. Chelsea Football Club, which is owned by Roman Abramovich, who is a noted Vladimir Putin supporter. And obviously his success has come thanks to a lot of what Russia has allowed him to do. And he's a like oil oligarch, basically. Came with a statement. He owns Chelsea and came out with a statement that he was handing over stewardship of the club to its like trustees. Yeah. And everyone's like, oh, what a saint. Like guy putting the football club first. Like I went and read the replies to this and it was like all these Chelsea fans like, this guy cares about our club. He cares so much about the football team. And I was like, wait, hold on. The guy is trying to like avoid, he's basically going, this is what I thought it was like. It was like, hey, I stole this really nice car. Would you mind like putting it in your garage for a little bit? The police are out and I just I'm going to go on vacation. You're going to put this in your garage. And if they come by, just, pretend the garage is full of flowers, right?
All vibes. No, yeah, that was interesting. And again, like it's one of those where, we don't, again, like I don't, there are basics of what's happened in this region over the last, when was Trump, like 3-4 years ago. But like, even at the same time, like the hard part about this and what I feel like is a triumph in Ukraine, and maybe this can be a lesson to us in the States, is like, instead of fighting imaginary battles amongst themselves, they've bandied together and fought a battle against a real.
Well, they have no choice.
Yeah, I mean, and again, but like we had no choice with some things in the past, and like I feel like that to me is again, it's born out of horribleness, but it's like one of the more uplifting things I've seen in a while, and like I don't think that should be lost on anybody.
Before we get rolling here, a reminder that you can get 25% off any PFF subscription with the promo code FORECAST, FRECAST. You can get an Edge subscription, $40 a year, which includes all of PFF's great locked article content, the NFL Draft Guide, the 2022 free agency rankings, which obviously are very important as we roll into free agency, and of course data and grades for the entire 2021 season and beyond, obviously going through next year. If you want a little bit more, get an elite subscription, which gives you all of the great betting tools. Rolling into next year, you will want to use them. So promo code FORECAST, FORECAST, for 25% off. Okay, some interesting football news here that I wanted to get your take on. Sean McVay reportedly turned down 5 years, $100 million to call football games. Would you have made that same move?
I'd like to think I would have made the same move if my conviction was that, but man, like, you've won a Super Bowl,
been to two
of them. Turn around. Like, think about this. Like, this is the crazy thing. So everybody makes fun of Jeff Fisher, and like, I think understandably so. Mm-hmm. But the Rams prior to Jeff Fisher had one of the worst stretches of football since the merger. Mm-hmm. Fisher goes in there, goes 8-8 a bunch of times, 7-9, 7-8-1, all this stuff. Gets them to 4-12. McVay takes over, and they're 9-7 or better. Playoffs are better in all but 1 year. And they go to 2 Super Bowls, one with Jared Goff, and they win a Super Bowl with a Matthew Stafford who, led the league in interceptions. Stafford.
Don't say anything bad about Stafford. Come on.
No, I'm not trying to rip Stafford in any sense other than McVay has taken 2 men to a Super Bowl, both of whom
are probably not making it to a Super Bowl
without him. Exactly.
Yep.
So is he any more on the pinnacle of his profession, or does he see it a different way? Does he see it as the great, like, think about this, like, Chris is like the OG now as far as like color guys in football. Like, and I don't even think it's close. It's even close. And Chris doesn't look like he's going to retire anytime soon, but like that's a spot that might open up in 5 years or something, 10 years. And then Aikman and Buck, like they're replacing somebody. So that's opening up a spot. We've seen Jason Witten fail at that spot. We've seen Louis Riddick fail at that spot. We've seen Brian Griese fail at that spot. If you're McVay and you're thinking, like 5 years from now, the money might be even better. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
and like
so I don't think he's. So that's the point.
Yeah, I don't think he's turning it down for good.
You could go into that role anytime you want. Like I don't think there's this going to be boom of people who are taking over. There's a real dearth of talent for both play-by-play and color guys. So I respect it. I'll also say this. You know what it tells me? Stan Kroenke is a very rich man.
Yeah.
The NFL coach not only does not fit into the salary cap, right? He's going to get a big extension. But let's just say I wouldn't be surprised if Stan Kroenke made sure that Sean McVay was very, very well compensated for his efforts. Plus, it just, if you're going into the booth and then trying to come back into coaching, that would be a struggle. I mean, you saw Gruden try and do it.
Gruden, yeah.
It was not. Let's not call that a success, Eric. That was not a success.
Gruden had personal failures. That was. I actually thought Gruden did a good job in his second year with.
Did a great job. Yeah. I also think your point about like McVay is undoubtedly a better coach than he is a commentator.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. No, I agree. So, but I think the issue is he looks and says, okay, how many coaches have successfully come back from the booth and had success? I mean, Dick Vermeil's one for sure. Dick Vermeil came back after like 15 years off or whatever, won a Super Bowl with the Rams, got the Chiefs to a few playoff berths.
Yep.
Joe Gibbs didn't really have success when he came back, but he was off for a while. Like Joe Gibbs made the Hall of Fame. He was off for so long and then came back and coached again. But like it's few and far between. Gruden, I would say, from a coaching standpoint. Now, GM, terrible. But the coaching stuff I thought was a plus for the Raiders. Everything else was terrible. And so he sees that and says, okay, maybe I'll string this out a little bit longer. And it's always going to be available to him. So I think because the rumors were that like he would, and we talked about this on the show, where like the rumors were that the work-life balance stuff was not something he wanted to handle. But like if you win a Super Bowl, are you allowed to change the work-life balance? Like you can like I think after you win a Super Bowl, you could say, look, you guys don't have to be here fucking 80 hours a week anymore, or you don't have to sleep at the office anymore. I think you can kind of direct some of that a little bit. And so if his problem was work-life balance, I think winning a Super Bowl can get him some cachet as far as changing that, or even being like an example within the league and saying, look, like I know you're spending 90 hours a week here, but we're 12-5 and Super Bowl champions, and you're 4-13 and not. So like, is there even something to that? Like, so I think he's earned himself some power, and I think he realizes that people are going to call football games forever, and he still is going to have that opportunity 5 years from now.
What he needs is a helicopter to avoid LA traffic. That's probably why his work-life balance isn't great. He's sitting in LA traffic for a long time.
Sure.
Let's move on to the combine here. So the combine is next week. What if anything are you looking forward to from a like betting perspective and a like league ramifications perspective about the combine? Because to me, I gotta be honest with you, to me the combine is a lot about like an opportunity for people in a non-stressful time of the year to come together and chop it up.
This sounds really bad, but like when you and I were starting out in our careers and we were like meeting with these teams and stuff, it was instructive, I thought. Aside from like going to some of these press conferences and asking like
questions,
questions, which that's not really my skill set, and certainly I could ask questions, but I don't think they're going to affect the betting so much. I mean, for me, it's one thing. It's like in Indiana, betting's legal, so you have a lot of outs if you want to like bet things like 40-yard dash time. Like to me, that's like from a degenerate standpoint, like to me, if those markets are ubiquitous, I think there's going to be a lot of player props that you can bet this next week. That'll be kind of fun. I've only seen them in a few places.
Do you have any idea what those like? Do you have a hypothesis around betting those markets?
In my opinion, I think like you probably just have to have a bunch of outs and bet the ones, like go down your list of how sharp the books are. So like if it's like betonline.ag, that's sharper than my bookie, right? So then if betonline.ag has, let's say, Treylon Burks running like a 4, betonline, let's say, has a 4-4 and my bookie is 4-5, I'd go to my bookie and bet under blindly, right? Just because again, like you have some ideas there. Just like if I'm betting a WNBA game and somebody has Chicago Sky +3 on Pinnacle and I can get it for +4 on some offshore book, I'm going to take +4 because of how sharp Pinnacle can be. And these books are differently sharp on different markets, but like generally speaking, there's like a continuum of sharpness. To me, that's how I go.
The continuum of sharpness. I like that.
Yeah. That's kind of how I go. Obviously, in some cases, it's just going to be, betting. Like I think the player props are going to start to emerge a little bit. So right now, for the most part, on most books, you have first overall pick, which that's kind of getting beaten into shape. Although the Ekwonu guy is starting, apparently there's been some big bets on him to go number 1 overall, which is interesting. I have some on Hutchinson and some on Neal. And then quarterback. But then, and the quarterback market's going to be a lot different this year, unlike previous years where the quarterback market and the first overall market were the same market. You have quarterback, but then you're going to start to see some of the first markets, right? So first running back, first wide receiver, first old lineman, first D lineman, first linebacker. Those kind of markets, if they come into shape while you're there and you start to see how people test, I think, those markets are extremely soft. So if it moves somewhere like FanDuel or DraftKings, FanDuel I think is a little bit sharper sometimes in DraftKings depending upon the market. If it moves on FanDuel, then you can bet it on DraftKings. If it moves on DraftKings, then you can bet it on MyBookie or something like that where you can kind of get ahead of things. I mean, MyBookie is still offering Evan Neal +134 to be the first overall pick. Like that's 45 cents better than what BetOnline is doing.
Or you could have got him at 9-1.
You could have got him at 9-1, but like, when I got him at 9-1 on, I think it was Barstool, like the limits were $25 or something like that. Yeah. Now, like, I mean, you could bet there's offshores where you could bet $500 on Neal to go first overall. And, that's a much, that's more money than betting him at 9-1, when you did. But
yeah, nothing like a great $25 limit. That's just comedic. I mean, I guess one of my thoughts on betting some of the stuff at the combine, obviously like the 40-yard dash is where people are going to want to bet. And I'm trying to think if there's anything that we can glean from maybe the past year, the past couple of years that help inform that. One hypothesis that I have is the combine is incentivized for people to run faster, right? That helps people get excited about it. So and that's weird because normally I would think, look, people are going to want to bet under for the 40-yard dash. They want to see guys go fast. And so I'm not sure which side. I would normally go like, oh yeah, you should bet under because there's incentive there from the actual NFL combine to see some fast times. But that's also where I think the public money would go. That said, you're not going to see a ton of, public money on there. But that's something to monitor, to like see as they're going, like, does it seem like the prices are just, the numbers are just being set too high or too low? Because I can't imagine there's that much information that people have around any of this stuff, right? Like, what am I going to do for these guys? I mean, like, am I just going to watch their tape and be like, this is how fast the guy was?
I think that there are probably some people who are going to use some stuff like tracking data or that kind of thing, and they're going to be able to, like let's say if they have zebra data from the pro days and stuff, they can sort of reverse engineer that. But anything short of that, no. Now, I will say, and we do make this adjustment, we're going to talk about this when we talk about free agent defensive linemen later, but we do like adjust pro days down because generally speaking, pro days have better numbers than non-pro days do. So the combine does.
Before we do, a little reminder here: if you are looking to gamble in Indianapolis, perhaps, or somewhere else that it is legal on any of the combine stuff, you should head to DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of both the NFL and the NBA. The NBA is good. In fact, today is Sunday. There are a bunch of really good games on. March Madness is right around the corner. So there'll be a ton of really good stuff to bet on. Plus, little Masters. I actually, we can do that at the end of the podcast today. I've got some Masters research, and I'll just start talking about it. But right now, new customers using promo code PFF bet $1 on any NBA team and get $150 in free bets if they win at DraftKings Sportsbook. It's that freaking simple. And if the Sportsbook isn't available in your state, you can still take a shot at a big payday using DraftKings thanks to the daily fantasy app that they have. Huge cash prizes available to win every single night. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF. Bet just $1 on any NBA team and get $150 in free bets if they win. The promo code PFF at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Minimum age 21 plus. Local requirements vary by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for a full list of requirements and state-specific responsible gaming resources. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Okay, we're going to talk about free agency here, and you wanted to focus on the defensive line free agent class. Why is that?
Well, we've talked. I mean, quarterback's going to be tough because it's the dominoes have to fall first. Wide receiver we'll talk about. We talked about a little bit of that last time in previous times. Running back, don't make me say it. And then tight end, O-line stuff. It's kind of barren. Cornerback, linebacker. Like this is the place where I feel like there's like legitimate value to be had, but a lot of players are kind of near. Like it's fun to discuss edge and defensive line because players that get to free agency at the position are generally speaking, they have questions about them. Mm-hmm. And so like every single one of these guys, and we're going to go by our rankings, Brad Spielberger.
You can find them on
PFF.com. Every single player here has some question marks, but every single player can add value to the team that's going to possibly acquire them. So just to kind of look, and I'm going to actually use some of our projections. So people don't know, George and I, R&D team built college to pro projections for players. We also have it pro to pro, so you can sort of project Von Miller in a league average environment. We also have a thing called Combine Score, which for those who don't you can't think through it, we're trying to distill the combine scores to one number for every single facet of play, which essentially what that means is using like some sort of principal component analysis to say how many standard deviations better than the average performer a player was. And so just to start here, our fourth highest rated free agent is Von Miller. And this one's interesting because he has, he's basically tied here. The person he's tied with will I think surprise you. But he's 33 years old, which is one thing. Like sort of that clouds it all, right? This is the one reason why might make free agencies. He's 33 years old, but we have him projected next year as a 13.1% pressure rate, a 2.3% sack rate. His combine score is one of the best we've ever seen coming out when he came out in 2011 at 2.6. So he's 2.6 standard deviations better than the average athlete rushing the passer since we've started doing this in 2006. So that's our number one edge. Do you have any comments on that?
Yes.
Do you think he stays in LA?
Well, here's what I'll say about Von Miller. So overall last year, third highest graded edge defender. Now, got off to a little bit of a slow start in Denver, had that slow year the year before. And the question was, is Von Miller, who's now 33 years old, is he cooked? Had ranked just 22nd in 2019, and then obviously was injured, came back from injury. What I think is really interesting here is that we've seen continuously players at the edge rusher position, and this is borne out mathematically, can perform well into their age. And one of the reasons for that is that technique and intelligence can really come into play. Von Miller, in addition to being an insane athlete, also is not like is not a one-trick pony, right? And so that would be the reason that I agree with you. I think he can provide a ton of value. I look across the NFL landscape, and I just have a hard time finding a better place, a place that he would prefer to be over the Los Angeles Rams. And the question here is, can they figure out a way to make it work?
Yeah, which is going to be the hard one. The interesting thing, we haven't talked about this, so coming up next week in Boston is the MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference. We will be presenting a paper there. One of the things that is cool is for edges, athleticism is important throughout the career, and there's good ways to measure it with tracking data that can kind of encapsulate things like how much has Miller improved or gotten worse since he first tested in 2011. But yeah, I mean, edge players, they age pretty well, generally speaking, if they're already good, because it's a position where early on you win because of athleticism, and later in your career you win because of tact. And you're always going to have the athleticism mismatch over the player in front of you. The left tackle never is going to have the athleticism mismatch over you. So as you sort of age and mature, you sort of have that. And
we should go after him other than the Rams.
Yeah, I mean, there are going to be teams that are going to be a little bit gun shy. Like, Kansas City needs edge pressure, but like they're not going to probably pay a huge sum to somebody right after they cut Frank Clark, who's making a huge sum of money for them. I think about a team like the Jets, who they had Lawson.
Yeah, let's just cut that right now. So like if you're Von Miller,
yeah, you're not going anywhere.
You're not going to the Jets.
You're
not going to the Seahawks. You're not going to one of these teams.
You could go to
not that good, right?
I don't think so, and that's maybe why. But he could also go back to Denver. There's a question about whether they can pay for him. Another team.
I hate that you brought that up, because I was going to say, like, honestly, there are two teams that to me make some sense other than the Rams. And one of them is if Denver gets Aaron Rodgers, and then it's like
that always used to happen in baseball though. Like a guy I remember Rick Aguilera got traded to the Red Sox, won a world, or went to the ALCS and went back to the Twins after a while.
Yeah.
But so here are the teams with the most cap space. By the way, we're just going to throw this out there: Dolphins, Jags, Chargers are an interesting one.
I was
Bengals, the Bengals right now are a team. Now, I think everybody believes the Bengals are going to use their money on offensive line.
As they should.
But the Bengals are a team, and we talked about right at the beginning of the segment, why did they get Trey Hendrickson, right? Because they got Trey Hendrickson for less than market rate. Like they got him at $16 million or so. Well, it's because everybody was wondering whether Trey Hendrickson's production was a function of Cam Jordan, Marcus Davenport, all those guys. And obviously he came out and showed everybody that was he had talent himself. Maybe the Bengals try to go in like that, because the Bengals have like a ready-made secondary right now. They have to think about Jesse Bates, but he could go there and win.
I'll just tell you right now, Von Miller is not coming to Cincinnati.
You don't think he's going to like that?
Yeah, I don't see an apartment here for Von Miller.
Okay,
but I think the Chargers are really interesting.
Yeah, because you can play across from Bosa, and
they have a coach that he would like. He's staying in Los Angeles. Clearly likes being in Los Angeles. Big shocker there. And would again have a chance to be competitive. What's interesting to me now about Von Miller is having now won his second Super Bowl. How much is this about joining a team that is there in the contention right now, or a place that is close enough that he could be the kind of tipping point? Because I think that's how he feels about his time with the Rams, and he played amazingly down the stretch there.
That's the thing, though. People say the cap doesn't matter, but I'm telling you this much right now. The Rams thing is going to be tough, because the reason he added so much value to the Rams was because this is how it worked. Like when Stephon Gilmore went to the Panthers said, we'll pay all your money. We'll only give up a sixth. The Rams said, shit, we don't have any money, so we'll give you a second and third round pick so that you pay all of his money. Now, the bill comes due eventually for a team like the Rams. Now, good for them. They cashed in and won a Super Bowl, and all the bets they made hit for the most part. But I don't necessarily know if he's a luxury item to them. They already paid Leonard Floyd the $16 million a year.
Right.
Like I don't know
and
if
I think
he's
that's the tricky thing.
Yeah, and Donald, of course, and then Ashawn Robinson is a top player on the interior for them. So I just don't know if he goes back to the Rams. A team that this is interesting. Like I think we've talked, and I don't know. I just again dark horses, Jaguars, right? Like.
Eric, I hate to be this guy.
If they give him a lot of money,
get off the Jacksonville boat. It's a Florida team, but it's not the Jaguars. The Florida team to
the Dolphins.
Watch out for is the Dolphins.
Yeah.
If Deshaun Watson goes to the Dolphins,
right.
I think Von Miller to the Dolphins.
Especially because I'll talk about this. Our fifth guy here is Manny Agba, former Browns draft pick, Chiefs player. He's had 2 pretty good seasons with the Dolphins. He's our 5th rated edge in free agency. He actually is this is interesting because he was the 32nd pick in the draft when he came out. He actually has a negative athleticism score, which means he's below average athlete for the position. So they probably do want to upgrade there, right? The Dolphins, great secondary. They got Javon Holland last draft. They have Jones, Igbenogany, and obviously Xavier Howard. Their linebacking core is fine. They have Christian Wilkins, who's a very good interior defensive lineman. They don't have edge pressure, right? So they could very much use Von Miller. The question then, of course, for Von becomes, you're the 3rd best team in that division. Quarterback position isn't really figured out. To your point, you probably have to go with Watson. All right, here's another one, okay? This guy wanted out of Arizona before the year.
Yep.
Had 5 sacks in week 1. Arizona wins, I believe, 11 games. Makes the playoffs for the first time since 2015. Chandler Jones makes the playoffs. This is the crazy thing. I remember back when Bill Belichick, remember when he was trading Jamie Collins and Chandler Jones and Richard Seymour and all this, and Chandler Jones, it was like a Pro Football Talk article that said, Chandler Jones thanks Bill Belichick for not trading him to somewhere terrible. And it's well, actually, it shows you sort of the value of individual edge players on a team that doesn't have as much. But the Cardinals, if I'm not mistaken, have basically that was the first time he made the playoffs with them. He's a free agent, 32 years old. We have him similar projections. He's a better, interestingly, so we talk about Miller, 13.1% pressure percentage, 2.3% sack percentage. Chandler's a little bit lower, 12.5 in the pressure, but 2% sack. He's somebody over time that has been reliably somebody who's gotten more sacks out of his pressures than most players, which will make him look not quite as good in our system, but obviously sacks matter. And so where do you think he goes? I feel like he's more of somebody who less of an all-around guy. Kind of reminds me a little bit of John Abraham, who was a Jet, and then Falcon, who was kind of like a liability against the run, but a very good passer, pure pass rusher. At 32 years old, does he go somewhere and kind of take on a 40-snap-a-game role as opposed to being
Yeah, and one of the questions I have for Chandler Jones is, what is that relationship like with Arizona? Because this could be a situation where he goes somewhere, maybe the money that Arizona would offer him feels like a jilt, but that money could be offered somewhere else, and he could feel emboldened by it, and I'm going to take this and go prove everyone right. So what's interesting though is Arizona without him would be him and JJ Watt. They're really thin at edge if they don't keep Chandler Jones. So that is what's interesting to me. I think again, Arizona would be a place that would make sense for him to return to. And again, I'll mention the Chargers and the Dolphins as teams that I think could be really
Dolphins feel like a place where he could get a lot of sacks. That's kind of like remember how often they blitzed guys off the edge? Jones might get a couple. Jones might be another player who doesn't grade as well for us, but gets a ton of sacks because of all the cleanup stuff he might get in that defense. That I don't mind at all. Obviously Jaguars too. Okay. Laugh a little bit.
I was preparing my next point.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Here's the one that's interesting to me because this is a player we know why he's picked number 1 overall. And he has not been uber productive in his career from a sack standpoint, but he did have.
Are you going to bring up Jadeveon Clowney?
A good season. He did have a good season this year for the Browns, and it was somebody that 2.5. He had 9 sacks this year for them in 14 games, which is almost his career high. Kind of a dysfunctional place in Cleveland. Played across from Myles Garrett, so got some help for the first time in his career. He had Watt, but Watt was more of an interior guy. Clowney 2.5 combine score. So he's 2.5 standard deviations better than the average athlete. He's only 29 years old. So you get 4 years on Miller. You get 3 years on Jones. You obviously have an injury history, and you obviously have, issues. People have always brought up sort of his effort and stuff like that. I think you're going to get a discount, though, on him, more than you're going to get a discount on some of these other numbers.
See, that was the thing that I was going to ask you about. With me, Jadeveon Clowney is the guy that I'm probably not going to touch. And the reason for that is not that I wouldn't love having him on my team, but the first overall pick, like literally, I still think that that play against Michigan still helps him get more money somehow, some way. And the fact that he had 9 sacks last year, I think it's going to make it tough for a team and him and his agent to agree, because I believe him and his agent are going to come in and go, look, he's ready to be a number one. Yeah, he's a number one guy again. And I'm not paying him to be a number one guy. I'm just not doing it. I would look, potentially to a team that feels like they're a really strong number 2 option away, right? Which isn't a lot of teams. And then I'm offering him like a 1 year, $12 to $15 million deal.
Yeah. So the thing with Clowney that I think people forget about, that is really important in the context, is that he is a fantastic run defender. And so that to me might be where this issue comes about, because after he had the 3 sacks for the Seahawks in 2019, but he was a fantastic player for them. He got pressure, he stopped the run, and then there were questions about whether the Chiefs would sign. He was well into June before anybody gave him a look in 2020, because it was sort of this hard nut to crack. He was not a productive sack guy, so it was hard for people to spin in. And I've tweeted this out before, but you look at what teams pay for. They pay for sacks first, then they pay for pressure. So he was this great all-around player. And then, as Brad Spielberger has noted, and our intern, by the way, congratulations to Zach for getting a job with the Eagles, pointed out, your draft status travels with you throughout. So he's this like weird problem. So the moment he gets the 9 sacks again, he probably is going to get paid in that $15 to $18.5 million range. The question is at 29 years old, is he worth it? Because I look at other players here. So we already talked about Agba. Agba's 28. Our 4th highest rated edge is Randy Gregory, who has a higher actually projected pressure rate and sack rate than Chandler Jones at 29 years old. A guy who has, former Nebraska Cornhusker, freak athlete, thought of, but has never been able to stay because of things like drug abuse and getting in trouble and things like that. Is that where you're going to get a value in this edge class? Is somebody who has not been reliably on the field, but when he's been on the field, has been a very explosive pass rusher.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Let me give you a couple of dark horses in this defensive line class and where they could go. And I just think that there are a couple here on the interior. And I look at a team like the Buffalo Bills, who could use some interior strength. And 2 guys that are, both in their 30s, Akeem Hicks and Calais Campbell. And, both of whom have played really well. Like, Calais Campbell is a top 10 graded interior defender last year, was 2 years removed from being top 5. Akeem Hicks, who is, continually when he's been on the field in Chicago, has been awesome. Yeah. And that's saying something, because Chicago sucks and still goes out there and balls out. I would be very interested to see if the Bills shore that up a little bit. It probably won't be the sexiest signing out there, but I always think those kinds of things can really help. The Bills are right there, and this isn't stopping them from giving up a, 13-second field goal to the Chiefs, but something that over the course of the season, I think.
What did we talk about last week with the Bills? You said the Bills are never desperate. The Bills are one of the
True. That's a good point.
The Bills are one of the most well-constructed rosters in the NFL because they're always a year ahead. So, you think about Gabriel Davis, 4 touchdowns in the AFC divisional round. Where was he drafted? He was drafted in the 4th round a year before, back when they had John Brown on the team, when they had Cole Beasley on the team, when they just acquired Stephon Diggs. And they're thinking about maybe if Diggs falls off a little bit, he's our one. He's our this. They drafted Marquez Stevenson, a very good receiver return man, in 2021 in case Cole Beasley ever decides to flake out and they need a slot guy. They're always a year ahead. I think that puts you in a position because you're never that strapped. And I'm looking at Buffalo here. They're actually, well, they have some work to do, but they have a high quarterback contract, right? That can, and they do have some flexibility there. When the Ravens traded a 5th-round pick for Calais Campbell, it was sort of this perfect thing where the Ravens are a well-constructed roster. They're not desperate for anything. So when they go to a team when they go to the Jags and say, hey, we want Calais Campbell, like, oh, it'll be a 3rd-round pick. They're like, okay, and they hang up the phone because they don't need Calais Campbell. Mm-hmm. Calais Campbell's amazing, but they don't need him the way that, some teams need corner help or some teams need edge help. And I think Hicks is that perfect situation here. Whereas if he doesn't attract a big contract in free agency because he's 32 years old, he the Bills can sort of wait it out and then sign him at the very end and be like, hey, you're on your way to the Super Bowl. We're favorites to win the Super Bowl this year. And I think obviously that helps when you're never desperate for that. You had Ed Oliver in the draft. You have other players who are pretty good. You add him there. You're doing really well. The Bills brings me to one more player who's our 39th ranked free agent and somebody who, as a Kansas City Chiefs fan, I would love for them to sign. And that's Jerry Hughes.
Oh, see, this is the whole thing.
Yeah.
I knew we were getting somewhere.
So part of me, obviously Melvin Ingram is great. He's only 32, right? Everybody looked at him like he was this old fat guy that was rushing the passer at the end of the year, but he's really the same age as Chandler Jones. Jerry Hughes is 33. We have him Jerry Hughes, when he came out, had a 2.3 combine score. He has very similar combine score to Von Miller and Jadeveon Clowney. The guy is a freak, and he's one of those that's always going to age well. Bills probably don't want him back at this point. And the Chiefs shouldn't want him for full-time duty. And they should still have a full-time player playing, edge, to set the edge and play run defense and stuff. But I kind of like Jerry Hughes to the Chiefs.
Is that the missing piece?
Well, no, but they have a few missing pieces.
It'll be funny next year when they have Jerry Hughes and Eric every weekend. The reason you want Jerry Hughes is because it'll be pennies on the dollar compared to Frank Clark, and you just want to sit here with me every Sunday night and talk about
how I texted somebody last year. I was like, hey, go after Melvin Ingram, and they're like, yeah, we don't have enough money. And then week 8, it was like, okay, Chiefs trade for Melvin Ingram. It's like,
take a bow. Before we get to Ballsack or Just Whack, the forecast is sponsored by Western and Southern Financial Group. You've got a lot going on, right? You've got your fantasy team, you've got your bets, you've got your actual NFL team. You don't have time to figure out your money. And that's why Western and Southern is there to help you figure that out and sleep at night knowing that you're in good hands. Buying your first home, planning to start a family, wondering how to make sure your money's in the right spot so that when you are ready to retire, you're not totally screwed. Go to westernsouthern.com/PFF and get a game plan that's built just for you so that you can go spend your time with the important things like betting on the combine. westernsouthern.com/PFF. Okay. It is time for our favorite new segment.
Okay. All right.
Ballsack or Just Whack.
And so if for the uninitiated, I read off a tweet and George tries to decide if it's from Ballsack Sports.
Yep.
Or it's just a whack-ass tweet. Okay?
Yep.
So I got one.
Okay.
All right.
I'm ready.
Justin Reed. Hiring Lovie Smith, a tremendous move for the Texans, not opposed to signing back.
Man, there's someone out there that has that take. That's for sure. I'm gonna say that's Ballsack though.
Nope.
No.
You finally you're
I
blemished.
was perfect.
This is from Pro Football Talk. Justin Reed actually said that about Lovie Smith. Okay. All right. Here's another one. I know we have to get going here.
You're battling back. We're good.
Okay.
We're good.
Breaking. Sources tell L. Richardson, NBA, that James Harden has expressed frustration with the 76ers after his debut last night. Sources say Harden is unhappy that Joel Embiid finished with more free throw attempts than he did and is questioning his future with the Sixers.
So that's obviously Ballsack.
Right, well, so there's a caveat here. Ballsack Sports retweeted it, but it originated at Nutsack Network.
Well, I mean, if those two aren't in cahoots together,
they're brothers.
It's like Chelsea Football Club and the Russian government.
Okay, and here's one, and I don't even know. If the #Vikings want to improve their defense, they should draft all Ukrainians.
Are you sure this isn't just your drafts?
My drafts. I've tweeted some fucked up shit, but I would not tweet that. This is Jim Suhan of the Star Tribune.
That's real.
A paper I read as a kid. We lost Jim.
Wait, someone a human actually
a blue checkmark tweeted that out.
You know when we talked about the person who wrote a poem to Putin?
Yeah, that was worse.
This might be worse.
No, it is. This is horrible.
Yeah, that is.
This is a thing where, like, if you have to bring everything back to football, that's pretty bad. Okay, one more. Uno mas. All right.
Favor.
Anthony Davis fell after surgery table collapse, spraining non-injured ankle. Davis is expected to miss significant time into early April. Full story.
I could have believed. So if it wasn't like the table broke, but rather that like he slipped on a banana peel, like I would have believed it, because that's just what has happened to Anthony Davis. I mean, this is Ballsack, and it's well done by them. As a Lakers fan, I'm just tired, man. I'm just tired.
The team looks tired. I've been watching basketball with the girls. Lakers are on late.
They're rough.
They look old, man.
I've turned from a Lakers fan to now a just like, oh, they suck again. So now I've turned I've taken my talents to Brooklyn Nets hating.
Yeah, for sure. There's one more, but I'm going to keep it for next week because it's too good.
Okay, we're keeping it for next week, and we're going to roll into recommendations. I'll go first, since you just went all in with Ballsack or just whack. I have two for the people. So I said I'd talk about the Masters, and I will. I got back on the cooking train last night, and I made lemon pepper wings. And I was a little like, oh, that's probably going to be something that you make at home and it just doesn't taste very good because there's like, these three random things you need that you don't have. It's actually super, super easy. I use the New York Times cooking recipe. One of the things that makes it really good is you add something called citric acid, which looks like salt but gives it like a sharpness. It's super easy to make. I highly recommend it. All you need is an oven and like 4 ingredients and you can make it work. I love lemon pepper wings, so I recommend it. Masters. I put down a couple bets. I'll tell you what I've got so far. So the thing that I like to do for the Masters is I basically bet on a couple of tenets. One is that early on in the season, people overreact to players' recent form.
Okay.
Takes time. Players like Tiger Woods was noted for this. Tiger would start preparing for the Masters weeks in advance and like would hit shots at other courses preparing for the Masters.
It's like Bill Belichick in the month of September.
Exactly.
Yep.
The other thing is that players that do well at Augusta National, it's the same course every time. There's a feeling there. If they feel it, they feel it. And I want to bet on those players. So a player that fits that mold is Xander Schauffele. 16-1, 18-1 in some spots. Both he and Brooks Koepka fit this mold. Brooks, he's switched clubs. That's notable. And so hasn't played, particularly well of late. Loves Augusta, is always a gamer. 16-1. I mean,
love.
Yeah. Xander Schauffele has consistently been a top 5 performer at Augusta. Loves that place. Guy's also a gamer. 16-1. If you're betting on favorites, by the way, in the Masters, you're a complete loser. Some longer shots.
Jeez.
You are. It's just, you're going to bet Jon Rahm at 8-1. Like he's world number 1, but like 8-1 is a terrible price. Jordan Spieth 12-1, Colin Morikawa 12-1. Like you got to come down a little bit. Some other players that I like who have performed well there in the past and have some long odds. Scotty Scheffler, and I have not bet these yet. But I'm just letting you know this is where I'm heading. Scotty Scheffler 28-1, Will Zalatoris, who came in second, 33-1. Also plays golf with Tony Romo, should be noted.
Nice.
Tony Finau, 35-1. All these guys consistently do well. They've consistently done well at Augusta. And then I have a super long shot that there's no reason to bet this. It's like he's like 80-1, I believe. I'm actually not seeing him on my sheet right now. But that's Matthew Wolff. Has not played well at Augusta. No reason to bet him.
Okay.
I'm going to do more research on that, and I'll come back.
You're going to do your own research. Okay. Here's an interesting one because I am going to give out a bet today. But I just looked at betonline.ag. Evan Neal is minus 225 to be the first overall pick. Okay. So
look at that.
If you want to look at another book that has it over plus 100, like you didn't get the best of it, but you're getting the best of it right now if you do that. I'm actually and this is actually off of some that we had from Gordon McGinnis.
Let's go.
Our soccer guy. But I've made this bet. And in fact, I had a really interesting day yesterday betting some college basketball for our friend David Solfaro. But Nashville tonight. It's not, we're not going to be posted by then. I'm going to take Nashville in the futures market for the MLS. That's going to be I've done that. I bet Nashville tonight.
What are they to win the MLS Cup?
Somewhere like 20, I think.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
PFF soccer data, by the way, coming your way soon.
So and this was a bet like that I'm taking tonight is Nashville SC basically plus 215 to win outright against Seattle. I kind of like betting underdogs / the draw in places like MLS. It does okay. And that's I guess my general advice. My recommendation for a something is I watched this with my wife and she really thinks this guy's funny and he's come around for me. It's on Amazon Prime. Jim Gaffigan, Noble Ape.
Okay.
Is
that an NFT or?
No, but he's extremely funny. He's a little bit different than what I normally like, but I thought he was hilarious. And obviously, I think he's good. He's not like dark or anything. So it's, if you want to watch it around your kids and stuff, like, it's perfectly acceptable. So Jim Gaffigan, Noble Ape.
Love it. That was our podcast. On Wednesday, we'll be in Indianapolis. See you then. Peace.